Welcome to the world behind midnight. Tonight, we uncover something that should have stayed buried. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. The apartment building was older than the city around it. Sarah had signed the lease without much thought. The rent was affordable. The location was decent. The unit was on the 4th floor of a building that had probably been impressive in 1987 and hadn't changed much since. The walls were thin. She could hear her neighbors' conversations through the plaster. She could hear their footsteps. She could hear their lives happening on the other side of her bedroom wall. She moved in on a Tuesday in late October. The knocking started on Wednesday night. It was around 11 o'clock. Sarah was in bed, scrolling through her phone, half watching a show she'd already seen. The knock was sharp and deliberate, not the kind of knock you make by accident. It came from her front door. She froze, listening. The building was mostly quiet. Who would be knocking at 11 at night? She got up and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. For several seconds, she just stood there, staring at the empty corridor through the distorted lens. She waited for footsteps, for movement. Nothing. She went back to bed, unsettled but trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was upstairs. Maybe it was a neighbor who had the wrong unit. Thursday night, the same knock, same time, almost exactly. Same empty hallway. Friday night, knock, empty. Saturday night, knock, empty. By Sunday, Sarah had developed a nervous habit of checking the peephole immediately. Each time, the hallway was deserted. Whoever was doing this was fast, or they were watching, waiting until she looked away. On Sunday, she considered calling the landlord, but what would she say? That someone was knocking on her door. That seemed trivial. Maybe it was a building issue. Maybe the pipes made noise. Maybe it was someone's music playing through the walls. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. But on Monday night, something changed. Sarah was in bed, trying to sleep. The knocking didn't come from her front door this time. It came from the wall beside her head, the wall that separated her bedroom from the apartment next door. The pounding was loud enough to make her sit straight up in bed. It wasn't aggressive. It was measured, rhythmic, like someone was testing the wall, like someone was trying to get her attention. She got out of bed and pressed her ear against the plaster. She heard nothing, just the faint hum of the building's heating system. She went back to bed and lay there, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The next morning, as she was leaving for work, she noticed something odd. The apartment door next to hers, Unit 4D, at the end of the hallway, was slightly ajar, just a crack. Sarah hadn't paid much attention to it before. She'd assumed it was occupied, but now, standing in the hallway, she wondered. The opening looked dark inside, like the unit was empty. At work, she thought about it obsessively. Who lived in that apartment? How long had she been her neighbor? Had she ever seen anyone going in or out? She couldn't remember. That night, Sarah made a decision. She was going to talk to someone who'd lived in the building longer. She waited until evening, then knocked on the door of a unit she'd seen an older woman enter a few days after Sarah had moved in. The woman answered, kind eyes, maybe in her 60s. She introduced herself as Patricia. "I'm sorry to bother you," Sarah said, "but I'm new here, and I was wondering about the apartment next to mine. 4D, do you know who lives there?" Patricia's expression changed slightly, become more cautious. "That unit," Patricia said, "nobody. It's been empty for months. The landlord's been having trouble renting it." "Why?" Sarah felt something cold move down her spine. "No reason," she said. "Just curious." But that wasn't true. Something had been in that apartment. Something had been knocking on her door. Something had pounded on her wall, and she'd been standing alone in a hallway, looking at an empty unit, realizing that the pounding could have come from anywhere. It could have come from inside her own apartment. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She lay in bed, listening to every sound. Around 3 in the morning, she heard it again. A soft knock against her bedroom wall. Not rhythmic this time, just a single, deliberate knock, like a greeting, like acknowledgement. She got up and went to the wall. She put her palm flat against the cold plaster. "Who are you?" she whispered. She didn't expect an answer. She didn't get one. The next morning, she called the landlord. The landlord arrived that afternoon with a key to Unit 4D. They entered together. The apartment was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no signs of habitation. But when they checked the door, something was wrong. The lock was broken. Recently broken. It looked like someone had forced their way in. "When was the last time you checked this unit?" Sarah asked. The landlord, a tired-looking man named Derek, scratched his head. "I don't know. A month ago. I make rounds. Someone's been getting in here," Sarah said. Derek made a show of checking the rest of the apartment. Nothing seemed to be missing. There was no obvious reason anyone would hide in an empty unit. But Sarah noticed something Derek didn't: scuff marks on the carpet. A pattern of footsteps that suggested movement back and forth between the shared wall. Derek called the police. The police found evidence of someone living there. A sleeping bag hidden in the closet of the bedroom that shared the wall with Sarah's. Trash in a corner. A water bottle. But no immediate signs of who or why. They reviewed the building's security cameras. Grainy footage from 3 weeks ago showed a man entering the building during the day. He hadn't left on any of the cameras since. They searched the building. They found him in the basement, in the mechanical room, trying to squeeze through a window that led to the outside stairs. He was arrested without incident. He was quiet. He didn't fight. He didn't explain. Later, when Sarah was giving her statement, a detective pulled her aside. He told her something she hadn't known. The man had been watching her movements. He'd documented when she left her apartment and when she returned. He'd been observing her through the connecting wall, listening to her, tracking her. The knocking, the detective said, was likely a test. He was checking if she was home. Each knock was a probe, a way to map her schedule. "Why?" Sarah asked. The detective shook his head. He wouldn't say. But based on what we found, he was planning something. The sleeping bag, the watching, the timing. If that lock hadn't been broken the way it was, if we hadn't come to look, we might not have found him when we did. Sarah was silent for a long moment. What if he hadn't been trying to hide? She asked. What if he hadn't run to the basement? The detective didn't answer. He didn't have to. Sarah moved out 3 weeks later. She couldn't sleep in that apartment. Every sound became the sound of someone on the other side of the wall. Every silence became an opportunity for something terrible to happen. She found a new place, on a higher floor, in a building with better security. But sometimes, late at night, she still hears knocking. Not from her door, not from her walls. It's somewhere in her memory, repeating endlessly, a reminder that the distance between two people, a single wall, a broken lock, a decision to reach out can be the difference between safety and something much darker. The knocking never really stops. It just moves to another place, and somewhere in this city, in some other apartment, some other person is hearing it for the first time, wondering what it means, not yet understanding that they've already been chosen. Some sounds, once heard, can never be unheard. Subscribe if you dare to hear more.